So when it comes to financial aid award letters, a lot of students tend to get confused as to what these letters are. So these letters are letters that you receive from each of the schools that you get admitted to. And in each of the letters, you'll see an example of this a little bit later on in this presentation, but each of the letters will contain federal aid, state aid, institutional awards, and optional loans that the schools will be offering you. So these letters have a breakdown of each, either if it's loans, if it's awards in grants, in California grants, or any scholarships that the schools may be offering you. Okay. So here's an example of the financial aid award letters. There's 3 different examples. This is a breakdown of some of them. So when it comes to, if you look on your left-hand side, this is an example of a UC award letter, so an award letter from the University of California. In the middle is an award letter sample from the Cal States, and on your right side is a sample of an award letter, or what an award letter will look like from a private school. So as you can see, some of them do have different amounts. So a lot of them will offer the federal Pell Grant, the Cal Grant, but each of them offer different amounts in aid. And you can see that each of them have different breakdowns. But for the most part, they do offer grants, scholarships, WorkStudy, which are things that we'll kind of go into a little bit more as the presentation goes on. But each of them have a different breakdown. So I kind of wanted to give you all an example of what an award letter is going to look like, and just letting you know that they all look somewhat different. All right, so let's go into types of awards. So when it comes to awards, there are certain types that you might find on your award letter. There's federal Pell Grants, which is money that is provided by the government, so it's federal aid. There are supplemental educational opportunity grants, and these grants are also federally funded. There is state aid, which is Cal Grant A and Cal Grant B, which a lot of you might see on your financial aid award letters. And there are also institutional awards, so grants given by the colleges themselves. So here is another form of federal aid that might be offered to you all. This is WorkStudy. So keep in mind that WorkStudy is an optional type of aid. So some students might qualify for WorkStudy, other students might not have it on their award letters. And in order to receive WorkStudy, you do need to get a job on campus. So just because you qualify for WorkStudy does not mean that you automatically have a job on campus. It's not guaranteed. It just means that they will pay you out of the WorkStudy funds, but you do still have to go and apply to a job on campus. So keep in mind that WorkStudy jobs are federally subsidized wages. So it is federally funded. And usually these jobs are very flexible. So they have very flexible work schedules. If students have, let's say, a final and you need some time to study, a lot of times the WorkStudy jobs will be very flexible with you. And some of these jobs, an example of this can be working at the college campus dining hall, or working maybe at like a cafe or the mailroom. So a lot of these are very flexible. You usually work up to 19 hours max, and you're able to network. It's a great opportunity for you to meet other people on campus. And again, students, in order to receive the WorkStudy funds, they do need to find a job on campus. Okay, so let's talk about types of loans. So when it comes to loans, students do have the option of taking out loans. There are different loans that you may be offered on your financial aid award letter. So there are subsidized loans or Perkins loans. There are unsubsidized direct loans. There are PLUS loans. There are student loans versus private alternative loans. So when it comes to subsidized direct loans, these do not accumulate interest while in school. Unsubsidized loans do start accumulating interest as soon as you take out the loan, and this will accumulate throughout the 4 years that you're in the school. The Parent Plus loans, these loans tend to have a higher interest rate. A lot of times we do recommend students to kind of stay away from these loans just because of how high the interest rate is. And then there are also student loans that are provided from the university. So these tend to have lower interest rates. And this applies to all of these loans, but you do pay them back after graduation. You have the option of paying them back 6 months after you graduate. And there are available programs that can assist you with paying off portions of the student loans. Another option to paying off these loans is, say you take it out your freshman year, you can also pay as you go. So you can pay or finish paying it throughout the 4 years that you're in school. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the breakdown of awards. So here's another sample award letter. This is how it's broken down into cost of attendance, which is tuition and fees, housing and meals, books and supplies, transportation, or other educational costs. There are also grants and scholarships. So there is the university grant, the federal Pell Grant, the Cal Grant A, and the UC grant. So this is, in this case, would be an example of a UC award letter. And then there's also the net costs. You'll also see the work-study option. So if a student is eligible for work-study, you will all see that this student, for instance, was eligible for about $1,500 in work-study. And then there's also loan options. So at the bottom, you will see the different loan options that the school is offering you. Keep in mind that these loans you do not have to accept. So we'll kind of go into that a little bit more, but these loans are optional. So in order for colleges to figure out what they will be providing you in financial aid, they take the cost of attendance of the school, subtract your gift aid, and then that leaves the net cost, which is the expected family contribution. In this case, this student with the net cost, so what will you pay for college, has about $10,998. So just keep in mind that some students have an expected family contribution of 0. So that means that the student doesn't necessarily have to pay anything out of pocket at the moment, or their family doesn't have to pay anything out of pocket at the moment, but it doesn't mean that they will not offer you loans. So because you have an EFC of 0, it just means that they will give you different financial aid in either loans, in grants, to help cover the costs, but you might have to pay some of that back. All right, so cost of attendance. So when it comes to cost of attendance of a school, these are the different college costs. So if you can see on the left side is the institution. So there are the community colleges, there are the Cal State universities, the UCs, and independent private colleges. So cost of attendance varies per school. If you can see, the cost of attendance for a community college is around $11,721. The Cal States are a little more expensive. The UCs start getting a little more expensive. And then the independent or private schools tend to be the most expensive. Keep in mind that the tuition also increases as well. It's a little different per college system. So if you are attending a community college, the tuition tends to be a little cheaper. If you are going to a Cal State, the tuition usually ranges from about $6,000 to $7,000. And the UCs, the tuition can start at $13,000. Sometimes it goes up to about $15,000. So tuition is like the classes that you'll be taking and additional campus fees. And if you can see that the private school tuition can be a little bit more expensive. So this is an additional breakdown of the cost of attendance, but here I do want to show you all the difference between if you're going to live on campus, if you'll be commuting to the school, or if you'll be living off campus in an apartment. So here's a breakdown. If you can see each column. In each column, you have different costs. So for the budget item, which is on the left, you'll see the tuition and fees, and you'll see that all of those are the same, like all across in each column. For books and supplies, again, it's the same, but that's something that we'll talk about a little bit more in adjusting. Room and board, that is what usually will change depending on if you live on campus, if you decide to live at home, or if you decide to live in an apartment off campus. So those costs can always go up or go down. And then any miscellaneous costs, that can be anything that you need for yourself. So any like personal items that you need to purchase, Transportation can always change as well, just depending on how far you go, if you need to buy plane tickets. So these are things that we can always talk about. And then of course the loan fee. So some loans do have a loan fee that you do have to pay. So now we're gonna focus on the real cost of attendance. And I wanna show you guys the importance of the breakdown, just because it really does matter in calculating your award letters. Okay, so let's talk about the real cost of college. So this is the actual cost of attending your school. And this is comprised of direct costs and indirect costs. So direct costs focus a little bit more on tuition and fees and housing and meals. And indirect costs are more like books, transportation, things like that. So items that you do not need to pay directly to the school, but they're items that you will need when attending school. And direct costs need to be paid before you actually start your classes, just to make sure that everything goes smoothly and that you don't owe anything once you start college. Okay, so indirect costs. So indirect costs, again, as I talked about, these include personal and travel expenses. So these are costs that you can, or students tend or are able to adjust. So books and supplies, things like that, those necessities, you can always adjust those costs. So books, you do not need to purchase them new. You can always adjust those costs in either renting the books on Amazon or buying them used, or maybe a friend has some and you can borrow those as well. But these books can always, you don't need to buy them new unless you absolutely have to, and those costs can always go down. When it comes to travel expenses, same thing. If you are going or attending a college that's a little further away, you can always, carpool with someone. You can always purchase a plane ticket that's a little bit more affordable during a certain time frame, or you can commute to and from school. So kind of keep that in mind, that travel expenses change per student depending on how far you are going to college. Okay, so I want to show you an example of when it comes time to calculating your award letter with indirect costs. So the indirect costs in this case, this is the same award letter that I showed you earlier. But what you're going to take is you're going to take all of your free money. So you're going to calculate your free money, which is the federal Pell Grant, the estimated Cal Grant. In this case, it's the UC San Diego grant. And then that's going to equal your total free money. So in this case, it'll be $20,793. You're going to take your tuition and fees, housing and meals, and total indirect costs, which in this case is going to be the books and supplies and the transportation. And that's going to equal the total cost of attendance of $30,493. So you're going to take the total cost of attendance, subtract it, so minus it from the total free money that you're getting, and that's going to leave you with a gap of $9,700. So keep in mind, I know the gap is big at this point, but keep in mind that this is what we're calculating with indirect costs. So these costs, again, you can always change them. Chances are you're not going to spend, in this case, $1,542 on books for the year. So these costs can always change. So this gap would have to be paid either with the student loans that they may be offering you. It can be paid if you have the option of applying to different scholarships and you receive scholarships, you can apply those scholarships to this gap. So there are different ways that you can pay that gap, and there are also different ways that you can minimize it, so it can go down. So now let's focus on the direct costs. So these are costs, again, as I mentioned before, these are costs that need to be paid directly to your school. So if you do not pay these costs on time, you can be dismissed, or your admission can be taken away from you. So it's important that these costs completely get paid, that tuition gets covered. And these costs, again, also include housing. So these costs, can direct costs be adjusted? So direct costs, it depends. So tuition and fees cannot be adjusted. Keep that in mind, that your tuition and fees, and I'll show you an example right now, but tuition and fees cannot be adjusted. So keep that in mind, that for the year, that cost, whatever the cost of your tuition will be, that will remain the same throughout the year. When it comes to housing and meals, your housing and meals can be adjusted. So depending on the college or university a student attends, and depending on the option. So some colleges will have different housing options, such as doubles, triples, quads, and meal plans to make things a little bit more affordable for students. So here's an example. Depending on if you're attending a Cal State, a private college, a UC, these are some examples of what college campuses offer. So in this example, this is a room with a 7-day meal plan. So the student would have the option of paying it per month, per quarter, per year, but these are the room options. So a student would have either a single, a small double, a large triple, and there's a lot of other different options. And then a student can also select a room with a 5-day meal plan, which is a little bit more affordable. And same thing, they would have to select either a double, a small double, a large triple, or a triple. And you can see the different costs. So you can see that some of them are going to be more affordable and some of them are going to be a little more expensive. So a single, for instance, that's usually not as recommended for students that are starting their first year. So when it comes to applying for housing and picking your meal plan and picking your rooms, it's always important to kind of consider what's a little bit more affordable and what fits in your budget. When it comes to calculating direct costs only, here's another example. You're going to take your free money. So this is, again, your federal Pell Grant, your estimated Cal Grant, the UCSD grant, which equals, again, the total of $20,793. And you're going to take the tuition and fees. This time we're only including tuition and fees, housing and meals, which are the direct costs in this case. And again, depending on what the student or what you all select in your housing options and your meal plan, this $12,477 can always go down. So keep that in mind. So the total cost of attendance in this case would be $26,451. So you're going to subtract the total cost of attendance with the total free money. And that's going to leave you with the gap of $5,658. So remember that we're only calculating the direct cost. This does not include books or travel expenses. So this gap, again, can be paid with loans that are being offered, with any scholarships that you may have. If you have any money set aside for college, this can also be paid using those funds. So keep that in mind. The gap does go a little lower in this option. And keep in mind, again, that you can always adjust your housing and meals. So housing and meals can, depending on what the school offers, if it's a triple, if it's a double. I know when I went to college, I lived in a triple and it was a little more affordable. So it definitely helped with my financial aid. So kind of keep in mind, explore your options. You can always see what the rooms look like if you go onto the school's housing websites, just to kind of see like the layout and to see if you feel like you would have space or you would like to live in a small double or a triple. So keep that in mind. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about methods of payment. So as I showed you before in the other example, when it came to housing and meals and the ways that you can kind of pay it, it was either per month, per quarter, or semester, or for the year. So the different methods of financial aid, you can either fully pay it, the full amount, and you could pay your cost of attendance using your financial aid award. So either your grants, scholarships, whatever it is that the financial aid office is offering you. Direct payment of balance. So you can choose to pay off your balance in, again, one payment, so for the year. And usually these costs are for the year. So this would be split up either, again, another option would be monthly installments. So depending on your college, you can make monthly payments, and this is something that you can talk to your financial aid offices about. So call the school's financial aid office and let them know, like, hey, I have a gap. I need to set up a monthly payment installments, or what are my options to pay to, set up a payment plan. So these are going to be your different options. So monthly installments, direct payment of balance, which is paying it off for the full year, and the financial aid full coverage. So if you're covered, your cost of attendance is fully covered with your financial aid. Okay, so final item before we get into questions. When you all submitted your FAFSA or DREAM Act applications, you should have received a letter in the mail or an email stating that you needed to create your web grants account. So this account is extremely, extremely important. This will show you how much money you're eligible for or what awards, Cal Grants you're awarded. So when it comes to creating your web grants account, the link is at the top. If you haven't created it, please create it as soon as possible. So this will tell you how much you're receiving either in Cal Grant A or Cal Grant B. It'll tell you if you are receiving a federal Pell Grant. And at the end, when you decide what college you would like to attend, you do need to change that in school of attendance. So that way they know where to send your money. So keep that in mind. Another thing that you do need to do, which is important, is after or once you graduate from high school, you do need to log back into your web grants account and confirm your graduation date. And one last thing, these are some resources that you can follow. So there's a scholarship links, which are great scholarship resources. So if you have a little time on your hands right now, please feel free to research some different scholarships for yourself. Another great resource is College Research, which you can research different college data. If you are all having a hard time deciding what college you should attend, you can always research them a little more, find out more about their programs, what they offer, like in the school culture and everything on college data. Okay. Lastly, here's our contact information. So I work with the RFK schools, so the RFK community schools. If you all have any questions regarding your financial aid, please feel free to reach out. And Elizabeth Zamudio is our Vice President of Programs, and she does work with some of our students as well. So please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions regarding like calculating your financial aid award letters, anything like that. We are more than happy to help you all.